Hey guys, welcome to my channel where I'm reviewing every Godzilla film in release order, and today we're talking about The Return of Godzilla and the American version, Godzilla 1985. These are the films that began the Heisei era in Godzilla, like in the franchise, and this is the film for me. I have the DVD collection here. I actually bought this online like 10 years ago, maybe longer, and it was my first time ever seeing The Return of Godzilla. I grew up, obviously, with the American version, Godzilla 1985, and I finally got to see The Return of Godzilla, many years ago when I got these DVDs. I think this is homemade, and, what's funny is to review these films again, obviously I watched both again. And when I was watching The Return of Godzilla, instead of like watching one of the DVDs in this case, I actually was able to stream it from the Criterion Collection. I think it was on Apple TV. I was able to stream it. And that's actually the first time I've apparently ever seen the original Godzilla or the original version of The Return of Godzilla. It turns out that whatever's in here is slightly different. It includes some edits from the American Godzilla 1985. Some of the music is different. Some of the subtitles are different. So I think that maybe what's in here that is supposedly the Return of Godzilla is actually maybe like a TV edit for Japan that somebody like I don't even think a company put this out. I think like this is fan made. Everything's in Japanese on the back, so I can't read it. I think that's Japanese. That's Japanese, right? I don't know. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that it's different. When I watched The Return of Godzilla on Apple TV and I was watching like the actual Japanese version, the actual Japanese cut, there were things that I was like, I've never seen this before. Or like there were moments where the audio was significantly different and I was like, what's going on here, like in Godzilla's first attack, the first time Godzilla appears in the film, it's a subtle difference between the 1985 version and the Japanese version, but there's this fog around a nuclear power plant and the fog slowly dissipates, and in the American version you hear like Godzilla's growl, just like a soft growl in the air. And then, you hear his footsteps as he starts to approach the power plant, and then he appears. I didn't know this until I actually watched the Apple TV version. In the Japanese release, that growl's not there, which I thought was kind of interesting. It's like they didn't want to quite give it away yet. You know what I mean? Small difference, but there's actually like examples of some pretty big differences. I will say that between this version and the version on Apple TV, the subtitles were loosely the same. They were in the same ballpark. The characters were saying kind of the same thing. But the official Japanese subtitles in the Criterion Collection, I'm actually going to throw these glasses on real quick because this light's hurting my eyes. The Japanese subtitles in the Criterion Collection on Apple TV made a lot more sense, so I think those are official. I just thought that was interesting. This is really special for me, this film. This isn't just my favorite Godzilla movie. This is probably my favorite movie ever made, and that's like with heavy bias, heavy nostalgia, because if I tried to objectively pick a favorite movie, I don't think I could. But I love this movie, and I'm excited to talk about it. I will tell you up front that I think this will probably always be my favorite Godzilla movie. I still think it's great having rewatched it. I think that Godzilla 1985 is an abortion and like a crime against humanity. It's honestly, they butchered it. They really, really butchered it. And I'm going to kind of go through it. When I talk about this film, I'm mostly going to be talking about The Return of Godzilla. I'll try to mention things that were changed in the American cut, but just to kind of give you an overview at the start, I will tell you that the American cut, it does a few things better, which I know is going to sound absurd to some people, but it does. I think the intro is better. In the Japanese version, you have lava, just lava in the background as the music plays. The score is fantastic. But in the American version, you have like a black screen that's peeling away and there's fire behind it. You get a longer intro with a better section of the score, and the the parts that are peeling away off the black screen like start to reveal letters and it's spelling out Godzilla. I actually think that's fire. The outro is better in the American version. You may not like Raymond Burr's like short monologue at the end of the film in the American version. I actually think it's really good. I think it's just about the only good thing that the Steve Martin character contributes to this movie. It was great to see him back in Godzilla 1985, but he's written way worse in this film, and I'll get more into it later, but the American version sucks, just straight up. I still have love for it because it's the version I grew up with. I think it's a testament to how good The Return of Godzilla is that I could watch the butchered American version that is like at least like 3 points lower on the scale, probably more. Like I think The Return of Godzilla is legitimately like a 9 out of 10 film. For me, it's a 10 out of 10, but I think it's at least a 9 out of 10. And I'm being objective. I still think it's a 9 out of 10. I could see an 8, but I think it's a solid 9. For me, it's a 10. I think that Godzilla 1985 is like a 4 out of 10, maybe a 5 out of 10. Like just because I have to seriously dock points for the way they chose to insert like the political propaganda with like they undercut the entire like theme of the film, with Japan and the Cold War and working with America and Russia, to stop Godzilla together, the accidental nuclear missile being launched, and then in the American version they change it. Wow, I am really going off script here, but whatever. In the American version, they change it to where the Russians are the bad guys, and they're so greedy to use nuclear missiles that they launch it even after Japan says no. All of it is so dirty, so shitty. And then when you combine that with the way that they cut this film and rearrange scenes and remove context and nerf the story, nerf characters, nerf character arcs, God, it's just like, it's just, a better, the outro, like the having a better outro, even if you don't like Raymond Burr's monologue, I think it's really good. At the very least, I think it's inoffensive. The Return of Godzilla cuts to a pop song that I can't remember the name of it. Actually, it's Godzilla Love Theme. It's literally like a fucking bizarrely emotional Godzilla breakup song. Is what I would call it. The ending of this film is so heavy, and to cut to that like pop song with girls singing a breakup song to Godzilla was cringe and something out of the Showa era. I don't understand it. The American version dodges that and cuts back to the superb music direction and music soundtrack of Reijiro Kuroku. I'm sorry if I said his name wrong. He killed it. He's the GOAT for the soundtrack. I cannot imagine following Akira, the guy that had been doing like music for Godzilla films in the Showa era. I know he wasn't alone, but he did so many good soundtracks, and he made so much iconic music for Godzilla. I can't imagine having to fill those shoes. And not only did this guy step into those shoes, he fucking hit a grand slam. Like a home run doesn't even describe it. The soundtrack of this movie is goated. Absolutely. I think it's my favorite soundtrack. I think it's my favorite soundtrack. The only thing that you could maybe say competes with it might be just the original Japanese Gojira film. And, whatever. You could debate that all day, but what you can't debate is that this soundtrack is insane. It's so good. And at the end of the American film, when they cut from Godzilla being thrown into the volcano to the credits, they go back into, like, that soundtrack, just perfect tension. Like, it's right. There's also a scene in the middle of the film where there's a helicopter rescue. Our main characters are in a building trapped during Godzilla's rampage on Tokyo, and a helicopter's rescuing them. And, they play the music from the soundtrack, Kuroku's music, and it's great. It's obvious. He's so good at, like, tension and horror and, like, tragedy and, like, just, like, suspense. Like, his music is just so perfect for this film. You really have to hear it. an interesting choice they made in the original film is that it's silent. There is no music playing during that scene, which, they're trying to get one of the characters. I think it's the brother, the character that's saved at the beginning of the movie in the boat. What is the boat? It is the Yahada Maru. I'm not sure. I can't remember. It's in my notes somewhere, but my notes are kind of like all over the place. I'm sorry. But anyway, the brother character, while he's being saved and lifted up into the helicopter, there's turbulence and stuff, and it looks like they might drop him. Like they might not be able to pull him up. They're using like this pulley or whatever, and he's in like a life jacket kind of thing lifting him. And it's a really tense scene, and in the Japanese film there's no music that plays during that scene, and I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if they wanted you to just hear kind of the fire and the silence and the destruction that Godzilla had created in the background, but I think that the soundtrack was a little bit better. So those are three things that I can think of that I liked better in the American version, and that is probably just about it. There might be one or two other really small things, but I think that it's overshadowed by all the things that are done wrong in the American version. Before I go any farther, I think I should also talk a little bit about like this film just in general. I have, let's see, here we go. So obviously it released December 15th, 1984, released in America, I think, as Godzilla 1985 in August 1985. So it released 2 months before my birthday. I'll tell you something else. The Nintendo Entertainment System launched October 18th, or it arrived to America. It wasn't for the full launch, but it arrived in New York for the first time in America on October 18th, 1985. I was born the next day on October 19th, 1985. So I'm telling you, it was Godzilla and it was video games that brought me here, brother. And that's all I do now is Godzilla and video games. I'm still, on it. Anyway, director is Koji Hashimoto. I think he did overall a fantastic job. We went over the music, the budget, 640 million yen. If you don't know, at the end of the Showa era, we had Terror of Mechagodzilla, which overall I still really liked. I don't think it was quite as good as Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, but it was still a great film. I was kind of surprised that off of the back of Terror of Mechagodzilla, they put Godzilla on ice for 9 years, I believe. And this was the 30-year celebration. And they popped off with this. They really went all in. 640 million yen. If you don't remember, the most of the Godzilla films in the Showa era were around like 90 to 130 million yen. And at one point, they were pumping these movies out for 30 million yen, 30 and 40 million yen. That's why some of them were so fucking bad, dude. But Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, I think, was 100 million yen. Terror of Mechagodzilla is debated. Nobody really knows exactly what the budget was for that. This was 640 million yen, and it shows throughout. The Godzilla suit is awesome. I love his suit in this movie. The miniatures in the film are fantastic. The set pieces, the destruction, the pyrotechnics, it reminded me of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. If you saw that review, I was talking about how the special effects director, they just let that motherfucker go crazy. Same thing here. Explosions everywhere. There's, especially in the Japanese version, because in the American version, pretty much every scene in The Return of Godzilla is either drastically shorter or just removed for the American film. You can pretty much, you can assume that for everything I talk about when I talk about The Return of Godzilla. In the American version, if I'm talking about something that happened in this movie, it's either shorter, missing context, removed completely, or it's in a completely different place in the film. It's just crazy what they did here. I have to sit here and think to myself, because, the first thing that I reviewed on this channel was a double review. It was Gojira and Godzilla King of the Monsters, the American version. And I really liked that. You know what I mean? It's been a while since I watched it. I don't remember any of it. That's why I could never do a Godzilla tier list. I don't remember Like, once I watch a film and do my review of it, I just immediately forget everything about it. What happened in Godzilla Raids Again? Fuck, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? What happened in Godzilla versus Hedorah? Fuck, I don't know, man. I don't remember. Like, it's gone now. But I do remember with the OG, I thought that the American version did a really good job inserting Raymond Burr's scenes, inserting him into the film, allowing him to give context to scenes. Even though, I feel like obviously Gojira is the superior version of that film, like the Japanese version, obviously, but what they did was serviceable, and the Raymond Burr scenes, as Steve Martin, were good. I like them overall. I think they did a good job overall. I was impressed with it, honestly, especially considering it was 1954. There's no excuse for this. What they did with the American version, bringing Raymond Burr back. I couldn't help but just keep thinking back to the 1954 version and what they did with Raymond Burr in the American version there, and like how it was pretty good. Like, I think they did pretty good considering what they were doing. Like, you might not agree with what they did overall, but I think they executed well. Here, everything is executed horribly and written horribly, and I just don't know what went wrong. I really don't know, and I think it's such a shame that they decided to butcher one of the best, in my opinion, especially after watching it again. And I'm biased, but even without my bias, I think this is one of the best films in the franchise. And man, I just have so many questions about why. Like, I understand the Cold War stuff and the nuclear stuff and making Russians the enemies. Like, obviously, I disagree with it, and I think it's horrible. It's the worst decision that they made with how they made this film was what they did with the Russians, probably, in my opinion. Like, just because it undermines so much of the film's, like, themes. However, I understand why they did that. I don't understand why they made Steve Martin, like, such a negative, like, party pooper, like, bummer of a guy. Like, he's just so negative, and he in every scene, he's just this black hole that brings the energy and the mood down, seemingly for no reason. Like, they're trying to play it up like he has this deep understanding of Godzilla because he was in the 1954 attack, and I'm like, okay, like, I get it. I see what you're trying to establish here, but just because he understands how, powerful Godzilla is and maybe how unstoppable Godzilla is, I don't think it means that in every single scene he needs to just be such a fucking asshole, or just be so, like, dark and like a black hole of just sucking all the positive energy out of every single. There's nothing we can do. You can't fight Godzilla. Everybody's gonna die. They never even found the corpses in 1954. Like, he's just so... I hate the way he's written. I hate the other American actors in the film. Not them personally, but the characters they're portraying. The way they try to throw this comedy in there with this one major character. He's like the ginger, miserable character, always trying to crack jokes, and they're either in bad taste or they're just not funny, or both. They only had one day to shoot Raymond Burr's scenes. Obviously, I don't blame Raymond Burr at all for his performance here. And my understanding is that he wrote the monologue that he performs at the end of the film during the volcano scene. He wrote that himself. Fucking salute, bro. Like, incredible job. And there's also, like, a bit of trivia on this film with the American version that Raymond Burr was actively pushing against a lot of, like, the comedy and stuff that they wanted to insert into the American scenes. Respect for that. So I have nothing against Raymond Burr, but it's character assassination on Steve Martin as far as I'm concerned. Like, they just made him so unlikable and, like, so dreary. I don't know why he's like that. But yeah, I just, and the American scenes here add so little to the film. Like, so many of them are just completely unnecessary, don't add anything at all. If anything, they bring it down. So it's just crazy to me. The editing and the decisions made around Godzilla 1985. What an unnecessary fumble for the Americans to have to watch that abortion of a Godzilla movie. Terrible. Let's see. What else? Let's talk about critical and fan reception. IMDb 6.8 out of 10, but I believe that is for both films. I could be wrong. Let me check. Okay, maybe not. Maybe not. I know it. I know on one of these websites the rating is for both films combined, which is like terrible. But 6.8 out of 10. I think that's a little bit low. I think that's low for this film, just straight up. Rotten Tomatoes audience 89, but it's less than 50 ratings. Only one critic review. General reception. Retrospective reception is considerably stronger than the American version. Darker tone, Cold War themes, Kuroku score, effects work. Return of Godzilla as a frightening antagonist are commonly praised. Yeah, absolutely. Godzilla 1985, 27%. It's just 11 reviews though. Audience score is 67% with 5. I think that's like. That can't be right. You mean to tell me that this is only 1 point lower than the return? Like that has to be combining both. I read somewhere that IMDb combined both, but now I don't see that now. But either way, that's just crazy to me. The 67 to me is too high. I think that's too high for me for what they did. But I took that shit personal, and if you didn't, I think you could still have fun with this movie. Metacritic 31. Contemporary American critics generally dislike the dubbing, comedy camp presentation. Modern fans tend to be more forgiving, particularly towards Raymond Burr's return. Japanese cuts preferred. Yeah, no shit. Direct sequel and ignores all the other films between the original 1954 film and this. This begins the Heisei series. This is my favorite era of Godzilla films. This is the series that I was watching the most and enjoying the most when I was like a teenager. Even though there's several movies in this series that I haven't seen. I think I've only seen like maybe 4 of these films, but they were just like all extremely peak to me. I just loved it. I'm really interested to see what I think of the Heisei series as I get to hopefully complete it and watch all of it. Returns Godzilla to a destructive antagonist. They increased his size to 80 meters. This one, so the suit actor, Kenpachiro Satsuma, sorry if I said it wrong, it's his first film as the Godzilla actor in the suit, and he remained Godzilla's primary suit actor throughout the Heisei series. I think that's awesome, and I think he did a great job. Godzilla is definitely portrayed in this film as a little bit slower, lumbering, a little like very animalistic. They definitely go for an animalistic Godzilla here, which I much prefer over the, humanized character that we were getting so much in the Showa films. So it was just great for me to return to this, and I think that it's another reason why this was my favorite movie as a kid. Obviously, I had a lot of Godzilla movies that I watched as a little kid, but this was the one, and it was just that soundtrack was so haunting, tense. Godzilla was like, he was genuinely just a monster, like a walking nuclear bomb. He was treated throughout the film as, like an unstoppable walking atomic bomb of a threat. And it just, I was never afraid of him though. That's what was crazy, is like I was still always rooting for him because he was so awe-inspiring, like. And they respect that in the film too. They really get that across in the film that, the characters are constantly in awe of Godzilla, even as he's destroying everything in Tokyo. And at the end of the film, when they finally lure him into the volcano and he falls in, nobody celebrates. And that's something I never really noticed or paid attention to as a kid, but it really stuck out when I watched these films again as an adult, in the last week or so when I watched them. When Godzilla falls in, everybody just looks sad that he's gone, sad that, that he even existed, because it's our fault that he's here. And now we have to do this to him. And, none of this is really his fault. Another really telling thing about this with Godzilla being so animalistic, one thing that I noticed in this film, Godzilla never unnecessarily uses his breath. They were so smart with this, and I feel bad for not noticing it sooner, but it's one of those things that they do so well. I feel like you don't notice it. Like, I feel like it makes a difference, but you probably won't notice it because it's subtle. Godzilla never uses his breath outside of scenarios where he's being attacked. Now, at the beginning of the film, when Godzilla emerges out of like this mountain next to the fishing boat in the opening scene of the film, excuse me, the main character, the brother, the one that survives the attack, says in the English subtitles for the Japanese version that it had a blue breath. So they do kind of imply that Godzilla used his breath when he emerged. But, he didn't shoot the boat with it, so I mean, who knows? But outside of that, in the movie, when he attacks the nuclear power plant, he's only going there to feed on the nuclear reactor. He never, really goes out of his way to destroy anything else. He doesn't use his breath. He doesn't knock over buildings that he doesn't need to. I mean, they show him knocking over shit, but basically it's just anything that's between him and that nuclear power plant. I don't think Godzilla is going to walk around. You know what I mean? He just goes through everything. But there's no, I don't think that he's ever depicted as having, just base malice. Like, he's just, this hateful animal. He's never really portrayed that way. He goes to feed on the nuclear energy. He doesn't use his breath. When he shows up in Tokyo Bay, he doesn't attack until he's attacked. He shows up in Tokyo Bay. The military's ready. Huge scenes with them attacking him, bombing him. I might as well just go here. Bombing him, planes attacking him, missiles, cannons, all this stuff. Right? Tanks are shooting him. It's not until he's been for 5+ minutes just been tanking everything that they throw at him that he just gets annoyed and shoots his breath and just eradicates everything at the edge of the harbor, which was such a sick scene. From one end, he just sweeps from one end to the other, and I just thought it was so fucking sick. And then when he's destroying Tokyo, which that's the only time where it's I don't think there's a nuclear reactor in Tokyo, so it's kind of strange that he went to Tokyo. I mean, it's not strange for a Godzilla film, but from this animalistic, viewpoint, it's what is he after? Why did he go there? And oddly enough, it's only in the American film that Raymond Burr, in my opinion, in an overall kind of bad scene, because Godzilla shows up in Tokyo and the Americans, one of the generals is get in touch with Japan, get in touch with their leaders, tell them we'll send them all the help that we can send them. And Raymond Burr's no, it's pointless. Don't send them any help. Instead, Godzilla's looking for something. We need to figure out what he wants before it's too late. I think Raymond Burr's character, Steve Martin, actually made a really good point there, but the overall scene was still annoying because it's I think you should probably send them some help. I mean, yeah, sure, an American jet isn't going to defeat Godzilla, but, you might distract him long enough for some more civilians to get out of there. I think we should probably still send help, Steve Martin's no, don't send them any fucking help. What? So anyway, stuff like that was dumb to me, but I'm not sure why he was there. But again, when he does go through Tokyo, even when he's being attacked in Tokyo, he doesn't use his breath until he's fighting the Super X. But I will say there is one scene where we get something different with Godzilla's breath here, which again, it's a blue breath. It's standard. It's still similar to what he was using before. It curves in this film as well, which I've never understood why in some cases it looks like Godzilla can kind of slightly curve his breath. But it can curve in this one, it looks like a little bit. I think it's just post special effects thing, but I've always wondered if there's more to it than that, or if it's just random. but his spines will light up. His spine's lighting up blue while he was like sucking the nuclear energy out of the reactor. Was sick, by the way. But in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, I think I forgot to talk about it in the review, but I mentioned it in Terror of Mechagodzilla. We see the only beam lock so far in Godzilla. Like, Godzilla and Mechagodzilla beam locked. You know, Godzilla shot his breath. Mechagodzilla, while in the Godzilla disguise, shot his breath, which I've always wondered. Like, it came out of the fake Godzilla's mouth, but Mechagodzilla shoots that beam from his eyes. So I've always wondered how that lined up. But the beam lock was pretty sick. Here we get something we've never seen before either, which is a burst fire of Godzilla's breath. I don't think I've ever seen this in any other Godzilla movie. And it's really funny the way it's done. And I still think it fits into the whole, like, he's an animal thing. Because, I mean, also this is a direct sequel to 1954, so he previously was a Godzillasaurus, right? Mutated through, you know, nuclear bomb testing and stuff, right? But anyway, he's walking through Tokyo, and he's just arrived. He's just there. He's taking his first steps through Tokyo. As he's walking, a helicopter, and I love the way that they show this in The Return of Godzilla. This is one of the things that I'm talking about when I say, like, I really feel like Godzilla 1985's editing is so bad, because I think the way it's edited, I might be remembering this wrong, because I'm not going off my notes right now. I'm just like fucking rambling, but I think in the 1985 version, even if I'm wrong here, this is an example of what they do all the time in the 1985 English version. They only show Godzilla shoot this one helicopter down. Like, this helicopter flies in front of Godzilla and he shoots it, and then he just keeps going, and that's it. In the Japanese version, what happens is Godzilla's walking, a helicopter goes by him, and he's like, ugh, you know, but he just keeps walking. He kind of ignores it. And then another helicopter passes by him, and it's a little bit closer, a little bit more eye level, and Godzilla's like, ugh, you know, and just like, I'm obviously like, you know, this is headcanon, I'm projecting, but like in my mind, I feel like he's just kind of getting annoyed with these helicopters. You know, one flies by and he's like, another one flies by, he's like, the fuck? It's almost like they're gaslighting him, like you're not gonna shoot me, right? Like, I'm just a helicopter, like, you know, you wouldn't shoot a. It's kind of like the whole, like, you wouldn't punch a guy wearing glasses, would you? Like, it's kind of like that old thing. And then a third helicopter goes by in front of Godzilla, and he's just like, fuck you, and shoots it. But it's a burst breath attack, so it's not like a sustained beam. He like spits out a blue orb. They don't really show it, but you can see it's a really quick burst shot that is like fully. It's not like he just shoots quick and stops. He definitely shoots like an orb of his atomic breath out that hits the helicopter, and then the helicopter falls down on top of a full, like, interstate highway, like 6 lanes of traffic, people trying to evacuate out of Tokyo. It lands in the middle of that, completely packed, and then just all the cars start exploding. It's a wild scene. There's so much death and destruction in this movie. It's insane. It's done so well. But again, like, you know, I never got that vibe from the American version, because you lose the context. It just looks like Godzilla randomly shoots this helicopter. But in the Japanese version, there's like this, I swear to God, it just looks like he's getting annoyed with how they're flying around him. And like when the third one cut, he's just like, fuck you, and shoots it. And I just think it's funny. I'll tell you something else they cut there that's real close to that scene. You know, this is the 30-year anniversary, so of course there's going to be throwbacks to the 1954 version. One of the main characters is a reporter, which made me think of the American version with Steve Martin being a reporter. It starts with a boat at sea and everybody being murdered on the boat, and Godzilla, you know, his first appearance is at the beginning of the film when a boat's at sea. It's a fishing boat this time. Godzilla doesn't hit it with his breath, but still, you know, it's very similar. Even the professor in this film, he's kind of got that attitude that the father in the original Godzilla film had, where he didn't want the military to try to kill Godzilla or use the oxygen destroyer or whatever. He wanted them to study Godzilla. And, you know, there's an older, like, I think marine biologist. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember what his actual, like, job was, but he's the professor in this film, and he kind of seems to have that same attitude where he doesn't think that attacking Godzilla is the right way to go, but he wants to understand Godzilla. And his parents were actually killed in the 1954 attack, which I think is a nice touch for his individual lore. So, I love all these throwbacks to 54, but of course we also have to have the train scene. So there's a train coming, and, at the last minute, they see Godzilla in Tokyo, and the guy hits the brakes, and the train squealing and, stops in front of Godzilla. He doesn't step on the tracks. He doesn't step on the train. In this movie, he bends down and picks the train up with his hand, and he picks the train up, and he actually, from inside the train, they shoot it. The cinematography is really good in this movie. They shoot it, and you see Godzilla's eyeball, looking into the train at everybody. And in the American version, they show all the passengers screaming, and then they cut back to Godzilla, and Godzilla just tosses the train down. You assume everybody dies. But in the Japanese version, he picks it up, and he looks in it, and they show everybody screaming, but then there's a second shot inside the, subway car or whatever, and they show a priest sitting there, and he kind of looks like a priest that's, very 70s. He looks like he smokes weed or something. He looks almost like a hippie priest. And he's there with some nuns, and the nuns are screaming and crying, and the priest is sitting there. The camera's right here, and the priest is sitting here like this. There's a nun crying in his lap. There's people screaming and crying all around him. And I swear to God, this was also, I don't think this was in this version, but when the priest looks over and sees Godzilla, he smiles. It's so quick you could easily miss it. But he looks over and he goes, shit, it's Godzilla word. I don't know. He just, it's so weird. I wish I had a picture of him, because he just looks like a stoner priest for whatever reason. And when he sees Godzilla, he smiles. Word. I don't know. I don't know if he was just an extra and he wasn't supposed to smile like that and they left it in, or if it's just an Easter egg. I don't know, but I laughed so hard, and I really don't like things that break immersion or break tone. But dude, I think it was just the way that he looked and the way that he was dressed, the fact that he kind of had that little bit of a stoner vibe to him. I believe that was how he would have reacted. He would have been like, "Oh shit, it's Godzilla, son!" Bro, it was so funny. It wasn't like a lot of other attempts at comedy in the movie that really pissed me off. And then Godzilla actually walks with the train a little bit before he tosses it to the side. Thought that was very interesting too. Just a small thing that they left out. But anyway, let me see if there's any other little facts I wanted to go over. Multiple Godzilla effects were used. Okay, so they used what's called the 84 Goji suit. That's the main suit. It's my favorite Godzilla suit so far. But, in my life, it's still my favorite Godzilla suit. But I have still not seen every suit. So we'll see if anybody, takes the mantle. But I just really love this suit. Now, I also really liked the suit they used in Terror of Mechagodzilla and Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. I think they made some changes to it between those two films, but that was also a really fucking awesome suit, don't get me wrong. But I just really like this one a lot. I love this suit. I love the face. And there's also a huge mechanical Cybot Godzilla, explaining some noticeable differences in Godzilla's face between shots. So some people don't like this version of Godzilla because of his face and because of his eyes. The eyes don't move around, but they do have blinking. And for some people, he looks a little cross-eyed. I get it. He always kind of looks like he's looking up and towards the middle a little bit, so he does maybe look a little cross-eyed. Not to me. I think in most shots, he looks fantastic. And with that, cyborg Godzilla that they use for, certain shots, the face is also different on that Godzilla. You can tell that Godzilla looks a little different, and I think that Godzilla looks worse as well. So I think those shots, that version of Godzilla in this movie looks bad, but that's not the main suit, so I can forgive it. What else? This is the first appearance of the Super X. I was never big on the Super X. I don't think the Super X is bad, and I don't really have any harsh criticisms of the Super X. You never meet the crew, so you never care about the crew, which I guess is a good thing because Godzilla obliterates them at the end, apparently. That's something else I've never really bought into. I might as well just talk about the Super X for a little while. So the Super X is like this this airship that is designed specifically to fight Godzilla or fight like any kind of like big, like dangerous threat, right? And it's immune to Godzilla's breath, and it fires these special cadmium missiles, which in Godzilla 1985, they briefly mentioned that the cadmium missiles like can shut Godzilla down, but it's mentioned like in the Japanese version, there's a whole conversation about what the Super X is and how it's going to fight Godzilla, and they say that it's got cadmium missiles, and cadmium slows down the reactions in a nuclear reactor. So they think if they're able to shoot Godzilla with these cadmium missiles, and they try to shoot him in the mouth, they're like dosing him with cadmium, they're hoping that they can actually like shut him down like a nuclear reactor. It's actually a brilliant fucking strategy, honestly. I like it. I think it's cool. We can debate about how realistic it is to try that, but I thought it was cool. In the 1985 version, the conversation about the Super X is like really chopped up, and then they mention the cadmium missiles like in smaller chunks here and there. I never listen, maybe it's 50% the editing fault and 50% me being dumb or not paying attention. I never understood why they kept shooting Godzilla in the mouth with these missiles, or why these missiles were slowing down his heartbeat and like shutting him down, almost killing him. I never understood it until I saw The Return of Godzilla. Then, and specifically this cut that I saw just a few days ago. It's crazy to think that I fell in love with The Return of Godzilla's American version when I was probably, 4 or 5 years old, 3, 4, 5 years old. And now it's all the way when I'm fucking 40. I finally see the original Japanese version after all these years and after a fake out with this. It's just crazy to me. But, I never understood the cadmium missiles before. Now I understand them. I think it's really cool. But I always I never really got hyped for the Super X Godzilla fight. And I think part of it is how brief it is. When the Super X first launches against Godzilla, Godzilla sees the Super X coming towards him, and he's like, "What the fuck are you?" And what they do is, again, playing off of this Godzilla is an animal vibe, they shoot these flares up into the air immediately. And when Godzilla sees the flares, he roars, which I don't know how they knew that he would do that. I know in one Godzilla film, they talked about him having some kind of aversion to bright lights or something, but I think that was in Godzilla Raids Again, or maybe King Kong versus Godzilla or something. I don't think that was in the original, but either way, he roars when he sees the flare, and then they shoot the cadmium missile straight into his mouth, and that's how they dose him with the cadmium. It's real quick. They just immediately do this, 3-4 shots back to back. Godzilla starts to shut down, and then he falls into, the building next to him. It's really, really quick. And then the Super X goes ahead and they land. They're like, oh, we got to recharge or do some repairs or whatever. I don't know. And then when Godzilla wakes up later, the Super X goes back flying. They make the comment that we're out of cadmium missiles. And so we got to fight him with regular missiles. And then Godzilla just chases it down, hits it with his breath, and knocks a building over on top of it. And then even then, I never bought into that killing the crew on board, because I would assume that the Super X, I think it's made out of titanium or something. I'm not sure that, a skyscraper collapsing or being knocked over onto it would actually crush everyone inside of it. I know it feels like I'm nitpicking, but I never really liked the Super X that much. And I think the fact that the two confrontations between Godzilla and the Super X, the first confrontation, extremely one-sided, extremely short, the Super X puts Godzilla to sleep. Second confrontation, extremely short, Godzilla puts the Super X to sleep. I think that it's forgivable because ultimately, the Super X is not a large part of the film or the plot. So it ends up not being very consequential to the film. But at the same time, it never really felt like the kind of confrontation that I would want to see this Godzilla have. Like, this Godzilla, this version of Godzilla, is a fucking demon, bro. He's such a monster. Like, to see this Godzilla specifically, I'm not talking about Godzilla versus Biollante. I wanted to see, like, no changes to the suit. This one right here. I wanted to see this guy right here fight another monster, or, you know, if he was going to have some sort of confrontation, it'd be with, I just feel like he would kick so much fucking ass. And I feel like we never really get to see his full potential in this movie. And I always wanted to see, like, another, you know, I think in the next film they do the same thing all over again. I could be wrong, but I can't remember if in Godzilla vs. Biollante, I cannot remember if that is a direct sequel to The Return of Godzilla, or if they do the same thing that The Return of Godzilla did, where they, like, ignore the previous films and make it a direct sequel to 1954. I want to say that I think it is a direct sequel, but his suit is a little bit different. Like, and I know I'm nitpicking here, but it's just like, you know, like, I know that this suit evolves in the Heisei era, but I feel like this one, there was something about it to me that it may have been less perfect, but it looked more organic. It had like a realness to it. I don't know. When I watch Godzilla vs. Biollante, we'll see. We'll see if I still feel that way. But yeah, the confrontations weren't very satisfactory, but I will say something that I noticed in the original film that they did that I love in the confrontation with the Super X. During the first confrontation, when they're shooting the cadmium missiles into Godzilla's mouth, when Godzilla, like, they zoom in on Godzilla's chest, and you can see his breathing is labored and slowing. And they actually do something in the American version that I kind of liked. They play a heartbeat, so you can hear his heartbeat kind of start to slow. I don't think they do that in The Return of Godzilla. I don't think they did that in The Return of Godzilla. I could be wrong. I could be misremembering. You can correct me in the comments. It's been like a week since I watched these movies because I've just had a lot going on in, like, my personal life, so I couldn't sit down to record as soon as I wanted to. But one thing they do in The Return of Godzilla is, in both versions of the film, when Godzilla's fighting the Super X, he shoots his breath at the Super X, and the Super X is able to tank it because the Super X is not exposed at all. And this was something I even noticed as a kid. You know, why is it that in the first confrontation, Godzilla's breath doesn't damage the Super X, really? In the second confrontation, when he hits him with his breath, it fucks him up. It's because in the second confrontation, when the Super X is, like, firing at Godzilla, he uses his breath when, so, like, the Super X is like, imagine it's the shape of a fist, right? And then there's compartments that kind of come up and shoot missiles out and then go back in. When he shoots it with his breath the first time, it's closed. It's, like, completely secured. When he shoots it in the second fight, there's, like, it's open. It's got all of its compartments out. There's, like, compartments on the side that are out, and compartments on top that are out, and it's, like, been shooting missiles at him, and he hits it while it's exposed in all these multiple areas. I think that's why, you know, it got it in the second fight. But anyway, in the American version, he just shoots it. He just shoots it in the first fight. He uses his breath. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't matter. But in The Return of Godzilla, the way it specifically happens with him firing his atomic breath at the Super X, when he's being shut down, when the cadmium is, like, working and he's, like, struggling to breathe and he's, like, starting to, like, pass out, he, like, struggles to get one shot off. And that was never communicated to me. It was never communicated to me in the 1985 version. But in The Return of Godzilla, that use of the atomic breath carried so much more weight. That scene carried so much more weight because you have all this context of him just like fighting to use his breath just one time, hoping that he can destroy this thing because he's, like, dying. And that made that scene and just that one use of his breath, like, 10 times more meaningful. And it's a little shit like that throughout the film they do in the Return of Godzilla, like these attention to small details, that just make it so superior to Godzilla 1985. And it shows that the people that were editing Godzilla 1985 didn't understand the context, didn't understand how important stuff like that was when they were rearranging these scenes. Anyway, I'm sorry to rant about that so long, but I had to. But yeah, the Super X, it's all right. It's no oxygen destroyer, but it's okay. Maybe I would have cared more if I knew the crew. But as is, the Super X is a really small part of the movie, and it just is what it is. It feels like it's more of a vehicle for the plot than an actual like foe for Godzilla to fight. So that's just my opinion. The Cold War anti-nuclear themes are really strong. There's something that I wanted to talk about too. Let me know if any of you like really remember this film, have watched it recently. Maybe you'll watch it maybe you'll watch it soon. I don't know. But go back and watch this movie. When I was watching The Return of Godzilla, there's so many scenes in the film where, they find out Godzilla exists. They're trying to hide it from the public. The prime minister's dealing with his cabinet and like, should we say anything? What do we say? How can we handle this? We don't want to cause a panic. And then they're dealing with diplomacy. The United States and, Russia are pressuring Japan to use nuclear, to allow them to hit Godzilla with nuclear bombs. They're like, you need to allow us to use nuclear bombs on Godzilla. It's the only way to for sure stop him. And then there's even a scene that's not in the American version where the prime minister's like thinking it over and like his cabinet is like giving him advice. And one of his like, I think military generals or something like that in his cabinet is like, I hate to be that guy, but, Russia and America have, like, things have been real tense for a long time, and they've had the chance to nuke each other multiple times, but they've chosen not to do it. They have not used their nuclear weapons. And, and then somebody interrupts and is like, wait a minute, are you saying that you think they just want to use Japan as like a test to gather data on their nuclear bombs? Basically, they're trying and they really do. They try to bully the prime minister. They try to bully the prime minister into saying like, okay, I'll do it. Like they're kind of like rude to him. They're pushing so hard for Japan to approve them using nuclear bombs. And then some of the cabinet suspects that they want to use nuclear bombs so they can get data on their bombs, how efficient they are, how much damage they do, so that they could maybe use them against each other if things escalate between the USSR and the USA. And it's just, it's really interesting, but it made me think of Shin Godzilla so much. I genuinely thought of Shin Godzilla multiple times while I was watching this movie. Like the non-Godzilla scenes mostly deal with like the politics of Godzilla, the optics of Godzilla, how he affects diplomacy and government. And there were just several times that I just could not help but think of Shin Godzilla. I was like, wow, this really reminds me of Shin. And I mean that in a good way. I know some people feel like that was overdone in Shin. I'll get there. But I liked it. I liked that. And I had never had that thought before, so I thought that was really fucking cool. Let's go back here. Japanese version has a Soviet nuclear missile launch. I've already talked about that. Like, that really pissed me off. Apparently, like, so at first, I think the guy that directed the American version said that it was like New Line Cinema or whatever. Like, basically, it was like movie executives and their politics. And the anti-Russia thing, they were like, fuck Russia, we hate them. Their politics is what drove them to have this rewrite of the film in the American cut and insert this scene where, the Russian major admiral or whatever his position was, the guy who was trying to stop the missile from launching, they insert a scene of a hand that's supposed to be his hand launching the missile instead. And I was even more upset about this when I watched The Return of Godzilla, because I don't think I had ever seen this before, but he dies in an explosion as he's crawling, fighting, and it's so heroic too, because Godzilla appears in Tokyo Bay, and their control center is in like a large like battleship in like the harbor of Tokyo. And so when Godzilla appears in Tokyo Bay, he tells, the rest of the crew, save yourself, get out. I got to go back. I got to make sure that, the nuclear control center is like completely shut down or whatever, and we can't launch a missile, and then Godzilla causes so much mayhem and ends up like creating these big waves that make the ship, bang against the harbor, and like things start exploding inside and whatever. This guy's fighting to get there to make sure the missile doesn't launch. And he's like crawling to get there, and then there's an explosion under him, and he dies in that explosion. It's pretty graphic. Well, it's not super graphic, but I had never seen it before. And it was a heroic death, man. It was a heroic death. He gave his life trying to stop it. And it made me hate Godzilla 1985 for how they changed it. Now, again, I think it was the director of the film said that it was the movie executives and their politics, they made us rewrite it. But in comes this guy, what's his name? Tony Randall later took responsibility for the change. Now, he's an American producer for, I guess, New Line Cinema, I think. He ended up saying, "Oh no, it was me. I just thought it was like a funny Reagan era 1980s joke." I mean, no, but maybe if it was a movie that was made today and you thought it was like a funny Reagan era, but this was in the 80s. What are you talking about? Like, if this was in the 80s, like I don't know. Listen, you can call me an idiot. I don't fucking know when Reagan was the president. I fucking don't know. I don't care. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, I don't know if I believe him. Because they started circulating this story. First of all, the director that circulated the story that it was like New Line's executives that were pushing for the rewrite and to make the Russians like wanting to use their nuclear bombs. He had a conversation with Tony Randall, and he was like, "Oh shit, okay, so I talked to Tony, and Tony told me like the executives did it, blah, 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 blah." That's what I read. And then Tony like gives him a call and is like, no, dude, it was me. And then they both go around and say, yeah, it was me. So like this dude's story that originally said it was like the movie executives and their politics. His official story is, I talked to Tony Randall, and like I had the impression after that conversation that it was the executives up above, but actually it was Tony's decision. I don't know how you make a mistake like that over the phone. Like, I don't know how that phone call went that you could possibly make that mistake. So I almost feel like they made Tony Randall the fall guy, but I don't know. Either way, it sucks. Raymond Burr comes back just for them to annihilate Steve Martin as a character. Doesn't contribute much to the film at all. I think Raymond Burr did an incredible job, but I think the directing of the American scenes is terrible, even if they only had one day to shoot it. They're terrible. Between one of the American characters making like tasteless, dumb jokes like, "Oh, that's quite an urban renewal plan they got going over there in Japan," when Godzilla's like destroying Tokyo and murdering all these people. Like, it's just not funny. Listen, I like dark jokes, but like, bro, like, what are we doing? Like, can we take this seriously? Like, it's such a serious film. I don't know why they wanted to add so much comedy with the American scenes, to add a character dedicated to comedy, and all these Dr. Pepper product placements, which was that was apparently like a requirement. Was Dr. Pepper product placements, and Dr. Pepper's in all these American scenes. It's terrible. Yeah, it's just bad, bro. It's just bad. Now, I will say, to be fair, in the Japanese version, they also have some comedy scenes with like this homeless guy. There's like this Japanese homeless character that appears multiple times in the movie, and he's like arguing with Godzilla. Like he's walking around a restaurant and just stealing stuff to like make something to eat and sip on. Meanwhile, Godzilla's literally like, less than a football field away outside this restaurant, like destroying Tokyo. And this homeless guy's just like grabbing fruit and grabbing like bottles of like like whiskey and shit and pouring himself drink and making jokes. And then he sees Godzilla appear and he's like, instead of running, he falls down and he's like, ah, fuck you. What do you think? You're big shit? You think you're so cool? You're such an asshole. Fuck you, man. Like, it's so dumb. It's clearly, I don't know what it is. I don't know if this guy won like some kind of contest to be in the film, or if, I just don't know. I don't know what happened, because I think one of the reasons why The Return of Godzilla is, was my favorite Godzilla film as a child, and probably always will be for the nostalgia and shit I've already been over. I think one of the reasons why this is one of my favorite Godzilla movies ever is it has such a consistent tone throughout. It is suffocating. It is menacing. It is unsafe. It feels unstable. It creates an insecurity in the viewer, and it's dark and it's heavy and it's tragic. And it does not. One thing about this movie that I said, I actually did attempt to record a review of this movie once before, and it was 2.5 hours long. I talked for 2.5 hours doing my review, scene by scene analysis and everything. I talked until I was about to have a stroke. I can't put that out. So here we are. I'm an hour into this, so I'm going to try to wrap it up soon. But I just don't understand why they would break that serious tone that's so consistent. And this was something that I said before, and I want to say this again. One thing about this film, it does have moments that are sort of iconic. Like, I think Godzilla using his breath on the edge of the harbor, shooting from one end to the other, is a sick scene. Godzilla falling into the volcano, but like, I don't think that The Return of Godzilla hits those 10 out of 10 S tier moments as much as other films from the Showa era. For instance, like in Terror of Mechagodzilla, when they're showing the city skyline and it's just a silhouette at night, all the skyline, all these tall buildings, and then you see Godzilla's head, just his silhouette, just that black Godzilla head emerge from behind a building. Fucking sick. When he's running at Mechagodzilla, in Terror of Mechagodzilla, and he throws Titanosaurus the fuck out of the way to get to Mechagodzilla because he's so pissed. When he breaks Mechagodzilla's neck in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. Just all these scenes. There's so many like scenes. If you watch my previous reviews, there's so many times where I've said, oh, then there's this like iconic scene of Godzilla doing this or that or this or that. I really don't feel like this film has that many iconic scenes to it. Like, it doesn't reach those S tier moments that often. But it also does not reach the bottoms that all of those films struggled with either. Like, I really don't think this film ever falls below like a 7 out of 10. And it maybe never goes above a 9, but to me, like, for all, like, this film is like 103 minutes long, I believe. Let me check. 103 minutes. And for pretty much, outside of the ending song, which is also hilarious, I will say, I did laugh, but I just didn't want to walk away from this film laughing, especially after the tragic ending scene. Which, by the way, one last thing the Americans did better. When Godzilla's falling into the volcano, in the American version, there's this high-pitched roar, this high-pitched, almost squeal of, like, fear or pain. It sounds like Godzilla's, like terribly afraid or terribly in pain as he's falling into the lava. Probably more so fear, because I don't think he's hit the lava yet. But yeah, this like really high pitched, and it just fits the scene so fucking well, and it hits even harder because the scene is clearly constructed for you at the end of this movie to pity Godzilla, which is funny because I like the ending of Terror of Mechagodzilla is so sad, and Godzilla's fine at the end of that movie, but he's leaving alone, and the music that's playing is so sad. And the camera pans out so far to where Godzilla's just this tiny dot. It's like I feel the emotions now. It's so fucking sad. There's something about it that's just so sad. they did it back to back. You know, in the Return of Godzilla, the ending is fucking so sad, dude. And I will say, I think the American version is better. Like, I think that high pitched squeal fits. It doesn't sound hokey or weird or anything. It fits. It gut punches you even harder. And then I think Raymond Burr's lines, as Godzilla, disappears into the volcano, presumably forever, maybe. I think Raymond Burr's lines are just so perfect. Like, it's so eloquently spoken. It's like a short poem or whatever, but it's perfect. Just fucking perfect. So I just have to give credit there. You still fucked it up. But I will give credit where it's due. But yeah, this movie is consistently, pretty much, except for like tiny, almost nitpicking moments, this movie is consistently, for me, sitting between an 8 and a 10. Mostly 8, 9. But for 103 minutes of like 8.5, 9 consistently, with like almost no drops whatsoever, and some moments that peaked even higher, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. The American version, I'm going to give you a 4 out of 10. Fuck you. I know I don't normally score, but yeah, this was incredible. Like, the tone is so consistent. Apocalyptic. That is a word that I would use to describe this. The music is apocalyptic. The cinematography and the way it's shot, apocalyptic. Godzilla's descent into the volcano at the end when they finally beat him, apocalyptic. His appearance, the cinematography, the way they shoot him from below, and how huge he looks, and when he's destroying Tokyo, and just the set pieces and the explosions and the special effects, the darkness, and like, it's apocalyptic. It's just an incredible Godzilla movie, and I love it. It's still my favorite. It'll probably always be my favorite, just because it was the movie for me in my childhood. I'd love to know what yours is, what your like movie is. I know that I haven't talked about every single thing that happened in this movie. I have not done like a scene by scene analysis, but I feel like I've covered a majority of this film. I will say that with the human characters, I think they were mostly interesting. They do some interesting things with them. Your main characters are Professor Hayashida, I believe, the journalist Maki, and then Naoko, the sister, and the brother. I think his name is Goro, but I could be wrong. I'm sorry. But yeah, Goro and Naoko, brother and sister. The journalist ends up saving the brother after the ship is attacked or damaged in a storm. When Godzilla emerges, everybody dies due to a giant sea louse on board. One thing I wanted to mention, in the American version of this film, when the sea louse attacks the journalist when he goes on board the boat, when Goro, I think his name is Goro, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, when he kills the sea louse and saves the journalist, they use this sound effect in the American version, like a balloon deflating, like a balloon bursting and deflating of air. It's so goofy and dumb. I always hated that. Even as a little bitty Rex Sterling, I fucking hated that. And I was so happy to watch The Return of Godzilla, the original Japanese version, and see that they did not use that sound effect. I don't know why they decided to do that in the American version, but they don't do it in the Japanese version. Thank you. Always bothered me my whole life. And honestly, it's done so well, because he saves the journalist, and then when the journalist wants to publish his story about like this giant monster attacking this boat, the government finds out before anybody else that it's Godzilla, and they're like, hey, don't print any stories about it. Well, he's a journalist and he wants his story printed. He ends up meeting the guy's sister. The sister doesn't know that the brother has survived, that the brother's in a hospital in Tokyo, because, the government's keeping all that a secret, and they're just trying to interview him, find out what he knows, learn more about Godzilla. They're not, torturing him or anything crazy. They're not holding him hostage, but they're just trying to keep the story under wraps. Well, as soon as he meets his sister, he just immediately tells the sister, oh yeah, Godzilla attacked. And, these are, at the time, these are like huge secrets, like world secrets. Like, it cannot get out. You cannot tell anybody. He tells her, oh yeah, Godzilla attacked. Godzilla's back. They're keeping your brother in this hospital. The government's... And it's like, as I'm watching that scene, I'm like, okay, is this guy just like so morally ethical that this brother and sister that he's never met before, like the fact that she doesn't know her brother is alive, like he's just like, I can't stand it, like she needs to know the truth? Or is he making a business decision? Is he making a business decision because he's so fucking mad they won't print his story? He's gonna force it. He's gonna force it. And he made that business a scumbag. That was literally in my notes. I wrote fucking scumbag, because as soon as he told the sister what hospital the brother was in, he follows her there, and when the sister forces her way into the brother's room and reunites with him, he comes in with a photographer to get pictures, and then they want to publish the story, and he blows the story wide open. So he did that for his career. It's very interesting. Like, it's such a betrayal, but they get over it very quick. Like, they even in Godzilla 1985, they basically just brush it off completely. But in the Return of Godzilla, when he meets up with them later, because they're basically all working with Professor Hayashida. That's how he meets the sister, and I think the brother's a student, and like then the journalist is told to work with Hayashida on like the story. So like that's kind of how they all four come together, and they're all working together throughout the entire film to solve this problem of how do we get rid of Godzilla. And I'll go over how they solve it in a minute. But yeah, the brother and the sister are clearly mad at him for a little while, but they get over it pretty quick. Like, they're like, that, it's fucked up what you did. They basically just say, they both see him, and they both kind of like take turns saying, that's really fucked up what you did, and then they storm off. But after that, they let it go, which maybe they're just more mature. Like, I'm from America. We would have held on to that shit forever, bro. Bro, Americans, we're still posting about it on Facebook 10 years later. Like, remember when that motherfucker did that shit? Like, fuck him. Like, bro. Anyway, it just, maybe, I don't know if it's a cultural thing. I was surprised how quickly they got over it and forgave him. And they work together. And then by the end of the film, they tease a romance between the sister Naoko and the journalist, because everybody escapes that building but those two, and he's protecting her, trying to save her. They end up having like a really beautiful scene together. At first, like they're trying to, he's using a drill on a door to try and get a door open, and the drill breaks and like stabs him, cuts him on his arm, and she's like wrapping up the wound for him. And they do this thing where like he looks up and she looks up, and they happen to make eye contact at the same time, and it's just like sparks fly. And it made me bust out laughing, because it was like, what? It just seemed out of nowhere. But I mean, that does happen. I mean, when people are going through a traumatic situation, it's like war, I mean, it could happen. But it was just funny. It was like they looked at each other, it was like, like it was kind of funny. And what they do that's smart about it is they never really like bluntly go into like have them kissing and talking about having kids one day and dumb shit like that. Like, it's just like he protects her, and then like right before they get out, there's a scene where she tells him like she's scared. This is after the eye contact scene. She's scared. She thinks they're gonna die, and she's tearing up, and he pulls her in, and he's like, I'm not gonna let anything happen to you. Like, stop talking like that right now. We're gonna survive. I'm not gonna let you die. And it's just sweet. It's a really sweet scene, and I appreciated it. And I also appreciated that they didn't push the romance harder. Like, just let it be, because I get it. I get where that's going. You don't need to do anything more. But yeah, and they end up getting saved by that homeless guy I was complaining about earlier, kind of. They end up, they find a fire hose in the building, and they tie it to something, and they lower the hose down, and then the homeless man just happens to be walking under the building, and they're like, hey, hold this hose, and he does, and then they kind of shimmy down, and then there's just some more dumbass lines with the homeless guy. Listen, I know it seems like I'm making a big deal about that homeless guy. He only has like 3 scenes in the movie, but each scene is terrible and breaks the immersion and ruins the tone of the film each time. And this isn't a movie where there's a lot of comedy anywhere. I don't know why there's this random comedy relief that doesn't belong. So that was frustrating for me, and that's why I've mentioned it so many times. And I just feel like there's more to it. In fact, you know what? Give me 1 second. I'm actually going to look it up. What's up with the homeless comedy relief character in the 1984 film? He seems out of place. I'm gonna see if like if Grok or ChatGPT or whatever can research that and find out. So there's got to be something with that. Like, was he some executive's like uncle or nephew? Let me see. Character is simply credited as homeless man. Oh, thank God. I really thought I was like pushing it with calling him that over and over. I was like, somebody's gonna be upset. But he's literally credited as homeless man. Fuck. Whoa. He's played by Tetsuya Takeda, a very recognizable Japanese singer-actor. It's basically a celebrity cameo. During the evacuation, he takes advantage of an empty Shinjuku, I don't know what that is, raids a high-end restaurant, drinks expensive liquor, mouths off to Godzilla, and later happens to help Maki and Naoko. So Maki's the journalist, yeah. I might have said Goro, doesn't matter. Let me see. That's crazy. I didn't know that. Let's see. Well, let's just read it together. Why is he so tonally weird? Filmmakers appear to have wanted a brief pressure release character during the extremely grim Tokyo attack. That's why his material sticks out so much more than comedy would in the typical 60s, 70s Godzilla movie. Takeda made the character even broader himself. His famous line insulting Godzilla as a country bumpkin, yeah, he calls him a country bumpkin, was reportedly an ad-lib based on something Takeda himself had been told when he first moved to Tokyo from Fukuoka. Japanese references say the screenplay essentially gave him very little dialogue at the moment, and Takeda improvised the rant. I mean, I can appreciate that. I still don't like it, but at least there's a story behind it that I like. That I do like. I do like this. So what you're reacting to isn't really the screenplay. It's Tetsuya Takeda being allowed to do a comedic cameo inside an otherwise very serious Godzilla film. Oh man, that's funny. Maybe a little bit more going on. You can read him as a small piece of social satire. Tokyo has been evacuated. The wealthy commercial center is deserted. This homeless man suddenly gets to walk into an upscale restaurant, eat expensive food, drink cognac. Is that how you say it, cognac? I don't know. That would ordinarily be inaccessible to him. One contemporary interpretation is essentially catastrophe temporarily overturns the normal social order. Yeah, that's true. There is also an intentional wordplay reference in the restaurant scene. Special effects director later said he wanted the word kami, God, worked into the scene. Hence the line about drinking camus. Camus? I don't know what that is, sorry. Whose Japanese pronunciation can play off kami. Okay, well, interesting. And well, you know what? I'm glad I looked that up because, you know, I genuinely hated those scenes so much, not knowing the backstory and not knowing that he was a celebrity cameo. But I did suspect there was more to it. You know, I'm glad I actually looked it up because that kind of makes it a little bit easier to swallow. Pause. Because now that I know the story behind it, like, even though I don't know that celebrity, obviously it's not as funny to me as an American. I'm sure Japanese audiences could have appreciated it more. But, like, I don't hate it as much now. So, there you go. Anyway, how do they beat Godzilla in this film? This is the last thing I'm going to talk about. Fuck. I might have to give credit to the American version one more time. One more again. We might have to just praise the Americans one more again, but this is the last time. So, the professor has been studying Godzilla for most of his adult life because Godzilla killed his parents, and he wants to understand Godzilla. During Godzilla's first attack on the nuclear power plant, this is where I do think we get an iconic scene where they reveal Godzilla. A guy walks outside of the nuclear plant, and all of a sudden, like, Godzilla steps down 10 feet away from him. The ground splits under him. He looks up and falls down, and you don't see Godzilla yet. You just see him looking like, oh my fucking God, terrified. And then they show Godzilla's foot, and they slowly pan up, and that's fucking sick. Now, there's no way Godzilla got that close to that dude and he didn't know that Godzilla was there. But for the scene, they clearly did it for the shot. I let it pass. Anyway, during this attack, the professor and everybody else shows up, and they're recording the attack, and they're recording it with, like, I guess it's like this piece of equipment that is like sonar or X-ray or MRI. It takes images of the inside of the body, including the organs. So they're getting data on Godzilla. By the way, I always wondered how they knew to be there. Like, they arrive in a helicopter and start recording Godzilla's attack, but they specifically say in the Japanese version, because you might be wondering, where's the military? Somebody says to the prime minister, like in an offhanded, very short comment, like, due to the intense fog that you see at the beginning of that scene, due to the intense fog, we didn't know Godzilla had made landfall. Nice. Also, at the beginning of that scene, the birds that fly away, like the foreshadowing with the birds, nice. After they record Godzilla and they're looking at the footage of Godzilla, and the professor's kind of studying like the organs and stuff, he notes Godzilla's brain. Now, in the Japanese version with the subtitles that I had, he basically says that Godzilla has a part of his brain is like magnetic, and it like responds to the shifting of Earth's poles, magnetic poles. And that, birds that are migrating and chirping, because a bunch of birds like fly, a flock of migrating birds flies past Godzilla. He sees them, hears them, drops the nuclear reactor, follows them, right? And so they're like, because part of his brain is magnetic and in tune with the Earth's poles, like magnetic poles, these birds, when they're flying by and chirping, if we could, find that frequency, that part of his brain reacted to it, we could get him to follow it, and then they lure him into the volcano. Listen, it's been a week since I watched this movie, and obviously I made a lot of notes. Maybe I'm misremembering part of it. But in the American version, what they say is that, because Godzilla is like a mutated Godzillasaurus, and dinosaurs were the DNA structure and even the brains and makeup of dinosaurs is similar to birds, which I've heard that's true. Like, I've heard that in my life that's true, but fuck, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know. This could be another thing that I've thought was true my whole life, and then I find out it's a lie. But anyway, he says that, because Godzilla's brain, because Godzilla was a dinosaur, dinosaurs share DNA traits with birds. Part of Godzilla's brain is bird-like, and that's why he responds to the migratory call of birds. I liked that explanation better. I think it's kind of, it doesn't really matter which way you want to go with it, but I felt like the Japanese explanation for why Godzilla would follow that frequency was a little bit more, like, it was harder to follow, and the American version was simpler, and it relied on established lore, and it made more sense, and I liked it. I did like that more. They end up being able to replicate that frequency. They put it on the other side of Mount Mahara, which is an active volcano, lure Godzilla to it. He walks into the volcano. They set off these bombs. He falls into the volcano. He is returned to Earth. They make sure to tell you that they don't think it's going to kill him. They're just sending him home, which I appreciate. Not sure that they needed to tell us he would survive, but I think they wanted to make sure. I don't know. I guess they just didn't want audiences crying too hard. But anyway, I do think that one criticism you could have is like, okay, I get it. Like, Godzilla's, he's animalistic. He's responding to this animalistic thing. This call has this effect on his brain. You turn this frequency wide up, like you're playing it on this huge satellite. He's drawn to it. He's going to follow it. But would he walk into a volcano? Like, I mean, he has eyes, like he still swam. Like, he had to get in the ocean, swim to Mount Mahara, right? He didn't drown. Like, he knew how to swim. He knew not to drown. Would he not know, like, hey, I shouldn't fall into the mouth of the volcano. Like, I shouldn't go into the lava. Like, I'll go around. Like, I don't know. That is one thought I had, but like, meh. Here's the thing about nitpicking. When I hate a movie, I'll nitpick it to death because fuck you for being a bad movie. Fuck you for wasting my time. Fuck you for wasting potential. Fuck you. So, like, I will nitpick that movie and shit on it, and I will hold those nitpicks against that film. But this masterpiece, no, you're forgiven. You are forgiven. This movie is overall incredible, and I just have to say again, the soundtrack, the composer, absolutely fucking killed it. I hope that he comes back. I hope he does. Does composer return to Godzilla? I gotta ask. I need him to come back. He fucking killed it. He did not score another Godzilla film. It's his only Godzilla feature film. Fuck. What? You find the needle in the haystack. You find a diamond in the rough, and you just throw it away. Why? Why? Oh my God, I can't believe that. I can't believe he never came back at all. Well, I just want you to know that this soundtrack, like Reijiro, I hope I said your name right. You are a goat, in my opinion, for this score. This is a 10 out of 10 film score. Flawless victory. And following Akira Ifukube, I think. Sorry if I said that wrong. He's a goat as well. And to follow him, you did incredible. I'm so sad that he does not come back. I'm genuinely so sad. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the next film, Godzilla vs. Biollante, 5 years later in 1989. Koichi Sugiyama was the composer for the score for that film. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But listen, guys, like, there's so many Godzilla movies, and I love so many of them. And there's more than one that's a 10 out of 10 to me. But I think everyone has that one Godzilla movie that you watched at that perfect age when you were young and your imagination was, half of the world was magic. Godzilla was believable. Like, you thought he might be real. You were so young. And something about that particular film connected with you as a child and stuck with you your whole life. For me, that's the return of Godzilla. Or I guess you could say, sadly, Godzilla 1985. But I would love to know what it is for you. And I'll see you guys next for Godzilla vs. Biollante. This has been an hour and 26 minutes. This rant has been almost as long as the return of Godzilla. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Peace.